What's up and what's happening? Welcome back to part two of the Locked On Reds and Locked On Rockies crossover. Paul Holden is joining me. We're going to talk about some Reds and some Rockies baseball. We've also probably got some thoughts about some other stuff going on around the league. We're going to talk about all of that here today on the Locked On Reds and Rockies crossover part two. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available. Whether you're looking at Reds or Rockies, Locked On is free and available wherever you get your podcast each and every day. And today's podcast is brought to you by Spotify Green Room. Download the Spotify Green Room app today, and you can join hosts around the major leagues and around all kinds of different sports on the Spotify Green Room app. They're changing the way that we talk sports. And Paul, we really got talking a whole lot about the Reds yesterday. I want to focus a little bit more on the Rockies today, or yesterday, today, whatever. Time is a construct, and I don't abide by it. So we talked about, and we kind of ended yesterday's podcast on a cliffhanger, looking at Nick Castellanos. Will he opt out? And if he does opt out, are the Rockies a good landing spot for him? I said yes, and I definitely believe he's using that opt-out. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of commitment the Reds make to him. We heard all the same stuff from a certain pitcher who won a Cy Young Award 2 years ago about how he loved playing in Cincinnati, he loved the fans, he loved everything about Cincinnati. But at the end of the day, money talks, and Nick Castellanos is about to get paid. I think the Rockies can be that kind of a team, which kind of leads me into the bigger picture that I want to cover today. What is the future for the Rockies? Because it seems, and I mentioned this yesterday, it seems like they're a team on the come up.
So it's interesting to come up. The Rockies, they never will admit that they rebuild. They never embrace it. And they did overperform this year. A lot of people doom and gloomed the Rockies, obviously, after I think we can safely say, I think for Rockies fans, that last year's offseason was one of the, if not the most difficult offseason to be a Rockies fan. The free agent, after just taking a competitive window of building what was the most exciting Rockies team that we have ever seen since, even the 2007 Rockies were exciting, but they were kind of a flash in the pan. I mean, we haven't seen this much of great baseball since the Blake Street Bombers, where the Rockies were really doing stuff that made them national. 2007, when you really look at it, was just a lot of baseball good luck, a hot streak that took them all the way there. But they, on paper, they weren't even close to that team, that Boston team that they matched up with in the postseason there. But they took that competitive window and really just squashed it. And it's hard because what we learned from this year's Rockies fans, that all the Rockies needed in 2018 was CJ Cron. Literally, that's all they, and maybe one more bullpen arm, and that's it. They just went and took these risks on players that just didn't work out. So they have to be better with their free agent approach, and I think that's one thing that will be the true benchmark for new GM Bill Schmidt. The Rockies, for Reds fans that don't know, have a new GM. Their GM that did the Nolan trade left quietly from the organization 2 months into the season, in the middle of a series. With just an email resignation. He got to slip out, didn't have to face any pressure. This is 2 months after trading Nolan Arenado.
It's a fly-by-night situation.
Exactly. The Rockies start the year, it's not going good, and clearly, and the owner of the Rockies, Dick Monfort, is a loyal guy. If you are Dick Monfort's guy, you can be the next GM of the Rockies, which is basically what happened with Bill Schmidt. He's been with the Rockies since scouting for them since the 90s. He's been there for like 20 years or something like that. And a lot of people inside the organization are excited. One quote was said, "How many times do you have to be hit over the head until you realize the right guy is right there?" I just got to tell you, as much as I don't want to dog too much on a GM that hasn't had a ton of time, I'm not excited by this signing. And that's one thing that worried me about the future, because I think for a bright Rockies future, they are a team that desperately needs an outside breath of fresh air. You don't need to drastically change it, but just bring someone that isn't Dick Monfort's buddy. Just let someone that hasn't been around the Rockies for 20 years be like, let's recapture October and all that, and we drafted Nolan and Trevor Story. Well, guess what? Those two guys probably aren't on the team. Well, one's for sure, and the other one's like 95% sure. I do think the shortstop market, being as highly coveted as it is a little muddied. And I think Trevor's down year might make it leaves the door cracked to return to the Rockies. I don't think it's as set in stone as it used to be, as it was at the trade deadline. If you were to ask me in July, there is no way Trevor Story is coming back to this team. They play better in the second half. They show that if they can hit behind this starting rotation, they actually can win on the road, because they actually did do that in the second half, more in the second half of the year. Because that's the crazy thing with the Rockies. If you look at it in terms of the Padres, if the Rockies win 10 more road games, they'll finish ahead of the Padres in the
Right.
standing this year. I mean, and people had Padres World Series no doubt at the beginning of 2021. So yeah, Jeb, you're right, where there is instances where the Rockies are on the come up, but they need to do things in free agency, and they need to keep their big players happy and interested in being in Colorado. Imagine if, I just, you do have to imagine what if. I mean, this was a Rockies infield of Nolan Arenado, Trevor Story, and DJ LeMahieu not only 5 years ago, and now the
Right.
infield is not going to be that. That's your future. But luckily, I will say, and one of the things that we are excited about, Ryan McMahon has developed into an elite defender and has really been able to fill in. And at least his offense hasn't been as much as we need more from Ryan McMahon. Has to take the next step. He is key for if the Rockies are going to be better, he's key. And same with Brendan Rodgers, who played a lot of second base this year, and has long been touted as the replacement for Trevor Story. But really, in reality, those two are great at third and second. So the Rockies really would love to get that shortstop. But I think if Trevor Story walks, they're going to look for someone maybe more in third base and move Brendan, or second base. Because I think they're going to keep Ryan McMahon at third base, pardon me, and then they're going to try to look for a shortstop that they can maybe just replace, because Brendan Rodgers is great at second, and I just think it'd be better for him to be there. And the Rockies finally gave him the major league playing time that we desperately needed to see, because he was a number 3 overall pick. He was third in the draft a couple of years ago, and finally the Rockies do it. What does he do? He bats 283, bunch of, a decent amount of homers. The Rockies didn't hit homers. That's the other thing. They got to hit more home runs. So that's kind of, I guess, just put everything in one scope of there's just there is a lot of potential, but it really does fall on the shoulders of a new GM, an ownership that thinks that they can't bring in some of these names and hasn't shown they like spending the money on the right people. But it is a new GM. So there, you do have, this is Bill Schmidt's first offseason as being the GM, and his team has actually filled out a little bit more. So we'll have to see. But if you're looking for more of a concrete thing, you're going to look at a Rockies team minus Trevor Story next year, I think is guaranteed. But one that's still going to have a pretty darn good starting rotation that they desperately need to, like you said, find the hammer. They need a hammer too. They don't have a closer. They don't have someone that Daniel Bard, while it was a great story last year, has shown that he's not a closer anymore. But I'm not opposed to giving him one more shot to let him come in the 6th and the 7th, because if he's on, he'll get you 2 strikeouts. He'll strike somebody out for you, but he'll pipe one over the middle of the plate, and it'll be a walk-off home run or something that we've seen so many times from him. So that, I would say, your most likely situation is a Ryan McMahon, Brandon Rodgers led Rockies team, with a surprise Connor Joe being a name that turns some heads when you see him. But those would be the leaders of the team if the Rockies don't do it. And of course, your spiritual leader, Charlie Blackman. He's not going. People have asked me if the Rockies are going to move Charlie Blackman, and unless he goes to the American League, I don't think anybody would want Charlie Blackman in a deal. He's paid a lot of money for defense that is not going to work out in places where he doesn't have a giant backstop behind him that he can just play balls off the wall.
It's funny you mentioned there's a lot of parallels between the Reds and the Rockies. I
It's
mean,
crazy, honestly. It's really
yeah,
weird.
like Schmidt and Krall could be about the same guy in the general manager spot. You've got your aging superstar that's not going anywhere in Charlie Blackman, just like Joey Votto. You've got your probably arguably the best player on the team that's not going to be on the Rockies anymore, just like Nick Castellanos isn't going to be a Red next year. I firmly believe that. And you've got some other guys in the rotation that look good, and you still have a decent lineup. Sans your important guy. So it's like there's a lot about the Rockies that sounds exactly like the Reds, and I think both teams are in the same position to really maybe take that next step depending on what they do this offseason. There's one guy in particular, and I especially noticed him throughout the year, really kind of got my first glimpse of him when the Reds played the Rockies, and then I watched him the rest of the year and really loved what I saw. And also, this is way off topic, but by the way, was absolutely a huge fan of the Rockies because they made me a lot of money when I when I took the home Rockies when they were underdogs. Man,
Right.
that bet hit a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of betonline.ag. But yeah, I got a question about a dude, and I want to ask you about maybe some in-house dudes that could make an impact for the Rockies next season. Before we talk about that, though, I wanted to talk to you, those of you listening, and also you, Paul, if you want to listen about this, but the Spotify Green Room app. If you've downloaded the Green Room app on your mobile device today, you already know that you can talk with media personalities. You can talk with beat writers. You can talk with announcers. You can talk with players and coaches about your favorite sports. You can also talk to people like me and Paul because we host green rooms and we talk with you about your favorite team, whether it be the Reds or the Rockies, or there's also NBA rooms going on, NFL, NHL, all of that stuff. If you are looking to get into a conversation about your favorite team, it's there on the Green Room app. It's always happening because it's like the conference call that you want to be on because they're talking about sports. Who doesn't want to talk about sports? You can find that on the Spotify Green Room app. Download it, create your profile, link it to your Twitter account, and start following personalities that you want to get notified when their rooms go live. That's the Spotify Green Room app. They're changing the way that we talk sports. All right, so I teased it, and I'll ask a much shorter version of the question than on what I was teasing. But Jonathan Daza, he's awesome, right?
Jonathan Daza can be awesome, and he has that potential. He didn't have a great second half. He didn't finish very strong. I think he also got I can't remember if it was COVID or he got hurt for a little bit, but he unfortunately just kind of fell off. But he deserves more time. That's I think what you saw from him this year is that he deserves more shots. He deserves a chance. What I love about Jonathan Daza is the speed is something that he really can bring. And when him and Raimel Tapia were going through their strong part of the season, when they were nicknamed Swagger and Dagger by Ryan Spielborgs there of Root Sports, it was a really interesting top of the lineup of two people that, like you said, they're not going to blow you away with something crazy hit, but they'll put the ball in play and then they'll take off and they will, and like Raimel Tapia, there were so many ground balls. I was like, eight out of 10 other players, that is a single without a doubt. That is a hard, I am running through the line. I'm not even looking, but him, he takes off. Same with Jonathan Daza. But, with what you worry about again with Daza is the fact that he just kind of fell off in that second half of the year. But again, he's younger. He's can cover the ground in that outfield out there. I just don't necessarily know how much more time he's going to get because he has spent a lot of time kind of coming up and down, been in the organization for a little bit, but hasn't gotten a ton of major league time. So I think he deserves a little bit more of a chance. But he just kind of fell off and wasn't able to bounce back from some injuries and some things late. Like I said, I don't think it was injury. I think he did come down with COVID this year. But man, at the beginning of the season and when those two, like Raimel Tapia is just another prime example. The Rockies just have a lot of players that are like Daza, where it's just like, yeah, there's some good stuff there, but are they going to take that next step? How long do we got to wait? How many times do you need to see them out there to know that, okay, we we're comfortable with this? I will say I just haven't seen anything from Daza that makes me think he's a starting outfielder. I still put him in that number 4 outfielder type of range right now. But just like what I think and I talked about this on the podcast one time too, and it's same with Tapia. I think the Rockies should have been way more aggressive on the base pass and use the fact that they have a ton of speed. I mean, Trevor Story's, literally from the just until you hit Charlie Blackman, basically, you're the top of your order was looking pretty speedy there for a bit, which really could have made some interesting hit and run type of moves that I think a more creative Rockies team would have implemented, and that's really what I'm looking for too, is creativity, and players like Daza and Tapia can do that, but again, baseball also only allows for so much of that creativity when the numbers start coming in, and that's just the truth. But I am okay if Daza keeps getting some more appearances, but again, I'm just more excited if the Rockies go and get a big outfield bat because honestly, what I really want to see from the outfield or just from another Rocky is offense. The Rocky, if you're going to lose Trevor Story, you got to replace the 2020 player, and that's what you're looking at doing. Even I know Trevor Story is an infielder, obviously, but the Rocky again. I'm more concerned about offense for the Rockies, which is just something you don't usually think that you're going to say because they'll win these shootouts. But the classics. Unfortunately for those that love the Coors Field narrative and to hate on the Rockies for splits, this was not a good year to really argue against anybody when it came to the home and road Rockies. So I desperately need. I think the Rockies really need to focus on the outfield, bringing someone that's going to bring not only good enough defense to cover how hard it is, because it's hard to play outfield in Colorado, but they
Right.
desperately need someone that's going to bat, because the starter, Jonathan Daza, Raimel Tapia, Charlie Blackman, that doesn't really bring that big bat that if you threw in a Castellanos, for an example. I mean, if you're that just brings a little bit more pop, and it just brings a little more sense, because the Rockies, as great as he was, you just can't rely on CJ Cron being your only big power bat. And that was the other thing when you lost with Nolan too, is Nolan hit 100 RBIs and batted 300 with 20 home runs. So that's really what I'm looking for, honestly. And I just don't. You're not going to get that from a ton from Jonathan Daza and Raimel Tapia. But who you're possibly going to get that from is the other guy competing for a lot of outfield time, Sam Hilliard. He had a good end of the year and big home runs for the Rockies on the road. He couldn't hit home runs in Colorado, but he would go on the road and hit home runs. And he was like, I need someone to teach me how to hit home runs at home. That was one of the things he said. So I think Daza has his work cut out to compete with Sam Hilliard, who had a much stronger end of the year for him. I think that's much more likely. I think I think it's more likely you see more Sam Hilliard than you do Jonathan Daza, though. But I don't know. It really, truly depends on what the Rockies' plan for free agency is.
It's interesting. I think he just had a really good series against the Reds, and that's what
Yeah.
kind of at least got me on to Daza. And I watched him a little bit and stuff like that. But it kind of sounds like the way that you describe him kind of reminds me of how I used to describe Phil Ervin. I was a really big Philip Ervin fan whenever he was a Red, and then he's since moved around a couple of times since then, but he was always like the fourth outfielder that it felt like if he got more time, maybe he would blossom, but you didn't really know for sure. And you just kind of hoped that the Reds would figure it out by getting somebody else in. And then they did, because they brought in Castellanos. Um, so that's interesting to see. And the other question that I had, kind of looking at the Rockies this coming year, is there anyone coming through the farm system that's going to make a huge impact? Because I look at with the Reds, I look at Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo, could both be in the rotation. At least both should be in the rotation at least by July next year, hopefully by opening day, but that's neither here nor there. The Reds like to be conservative with service time and all that other stuff. Hopefully the CBA gets rid of all of that. That's a whole different thing. But when I look at those guys coming up through the farm system, I'm like, those are the two guys that are make the impact. Are there people like that for the Rockies?
I don't know if necessarily the Rockies have someone that's going to come out right away. I think the Rockies need a little bit more time for some there. But Michael Toglia, he's a first baseman. That's the one thing. It's kind of interesting. He's just been hitting the cover off the baseball, and in terms of home runs and offensive production here as the fall league has started. He's really got, and he had a strong end to his minor career. The Rockies sent a ton of people to Arizona and Mexico, I believe. I think there's a lot of Rockies playing winter ball for developmental reasons. So there's no one on the that I'm seeing yet that I'm like, wow, they're coming to be the next thing yet for the Rockies, because I think the Rockies have found their younger potential guy. And in Connor Joe, this was a player that I think, because the Reds and the Rockies met up pretty early this season, if I recall correctly, like both pre-trade deadline. I think because they played the two series, right? I think they usually
Think of
do.
like think of like sandwiched around the end of May and beginning of June, I think.
Yeah,
Look
so
at the
you would have
timeline.
no clue who I'm talking about, because this guy comes out of nowhere, and he really just brings he just brought a presence to the team. Big smile, another mullet. The Rockies added yet another mullet to the lineup. Again, I think the Rockies are the most mulleted team in baseball. I had a whole episode exploring that. I can't think of any other team that's got more mullets. But anyway, he a great disciplined approach at the plate. Really, probably could still use a little bit more polishing in the outfield, but nothing hitting out there where you're like, that was a terrible route or anything. Not, communication and stuff, just being familiar with playing in all these different outfield ballpark, outfields, I think is thing, because he was getting everyday playing time. for a bit. He played first base. He was filling in there, and when COVID hit the Rockies, I think he was filling in there for Daza and some of the players in the outfield, and he showed he was taking. I mean, before he got hurt at the end of the year, he was starting and taking time from Raimel Tapia, who was the starting left fielder for the Rockies last year. So Connor Joe is easily my Rocky to watch next year, because you just have to know if that's hey, I got a hot streak came to the league, it flashed in the pan, it looks great. Got to see more just in terms of more games, but I would love, and I saw someone on Twitter that pointed this out, that they were like, if Connor Joe turns out to be Max Muncy, I will be really excited. And I was like, I'm honestly with that, because I don't need him to be the next Nolan. I don't need him to be anything. I just want someone that's going to go up, bat in the sixth hole, that's going to have a great disciplined approach, take pitches, build up counts, and hit a ball in the double, or hit a double in the gap. And he showed that he has home run potential too. I mean, he put the ball over the wall a few times, but then just got hurt. I think just as a matter of that, he survives testicular cancer, comes back after being out of the league, impresses the Rockies, impresses at the major league level, and now this offseason, that while he can get himself right, go into a full spring of not only more of just training, of body, of getting physically ready for 162. And I think he's going to be out there really making some people excited, because man, it's just so nice to watch. I appreciate great at bats, and you can tell in a pitcher, even if they get out, I just appreciate someone that's willing to take a pitch, and just kind of draw out at bats. And I don't know, maybe Jeff, you can things, but I listened and watched more of the Astros this year, just because of my work with the Mariners. And when you just hear them talk about how they lead, and the Mariners were great at this too, just drawing out at bats, that's so important. I just think I really undervalued the importance of good disciplined batting. I mean, you don't have to swing. The Rockies, it's just, I know pitchers are close, but umpires aren't perfect. I don't know. I don't know if you noticed that. I don't know if that's something you will watch for, but I'm really looking for more disciplined approaches at the plate, because it just drives me. I will say, it drives me nuts going up there and just hacking at 3 pitches and being okay with it.
No, and I agree with that. That was one of the things that I noticed that coincided with the Reds flatlining in September, was they really had very low average pitches per at bats. And they were having things where like it'd be like 1-0 or something like that, a ball, no strikes, and then they'd swing and it'd be a ground ball, easy out. Because that happened to them against the Cubs, that happened to them against the Tigers, that happened to them against the Marlins, that happened to them against all the teams that they should beat. And they started having a lot of problems with them, because they come up to the plate, swing at the first pitch, ground ball, easy out. You'd have guys who nobody knew of that weren't any good at pitching that would come in and have career days against the Reds, because they'd only averaged like 10 pitches an inning. It was not good to see the at bats that they had in September. And I think a lot of that had to do with not grinding out at bats. And that was the converse of what the Astros and the Mariners and what the Braves have really made their calling card, and the reason that they are where they are in the playoffs. And I asked you about the guys coming up through the system, because I kind of wanted to see, and I think it segues perfectly into our next topic, which was the big news coming out of the minor leagues, and the news that Major League Baseball would be rectifying a wrong that they have done for so long when it comes to minor league baseball players. But I want to talk about that here in just a minute, because firstly, Paul, I got to ask you, have you had a Built Bar lately?
I have had a Built Bar lately, and there's
They're so
my
good.
god, there's so many delicious flavors.
Yeah. You got to love those flavors, man. And the nutrition facts on those are just so amazing. Like, just, I love listening to stuff about Built Bar, so take it away.
You got it here. And I am happy to tell you all about Built Bar here, because like I said, so many delicious flavors: coconut, cherry barcia, raspberry, mint brownie, double chocolate, salted caramel, strawberry, orange, cookies and cream, the German chocolate. My favorite, any of them that have chocolate. I got to admit, I love anything that's got chocolate in it. So I'm almost always going to the chocolate stuff. And Jeff, that's what's great about Built Bars, because like you said, since I love chocolate, these are a great way to kind of get that chocolate fix. And I'm not going overboard. I'm not going out like I'm having like a candy bar, even though I still happen to have some candy bars. But here's the deal: 17 to 18 grams of protein, calories range from 130 to 180, only 4 to 5 grams of sugar. That's the big one, folks. If you haven't looked at some of your protein bars, that's the big one I think you got to look at, is that sugar content. And only 4 to 5 grams of sugar right there. Tasty and not too bad on the sugar. And you can all get them delicious flavors for only 4 to 5 grams of net carbs as well. They're amazing. They're all tasty. They're all healthy. And if you can't pick your favorite, they got the mix box where you can get 2 of each of the 9 delicious flavors, all available for you. And we got a great deal for you here for our Locked On listeners. You can go to built.com. That's built.com and use promo code LOCKED15 and you'll get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. The best tasting protein bar ever.
And I got another promo code for you, and this is at our favorite online sportsbook at betonline.ag. Go there and set up your profile today with the promo code Locked On and get 100% more. What? 100? No, yeah, 100. Buy one, get one free, 100% more at betonline.ag. They've got amazing lines, and I got a tip for you. We were talking about how, there's lots of great baseball going on with the playoffs. There's NBA getting started up pretty soon. You've got NHL going on. I'm looking at some NCAA football, and we started off yesterday's podcast on the crossover part 1 by talking about some Cincinnati football. I'm looking at Cincinnati and Navy. Cincinnati's going on the road to the Midshipmen, and they are favored by 27.5 points. I'm telling you, hammer that, because the last couple of weeks they've been favored by 3 touchdowns, and they've been winning by 5 touchdowns. Hammer that spread. Lay the points, take the Bearcats. They're on a roll, and they're number 2 in the country. Did we mention that? Yeah, we said that yesterday. So, yeah, number 2 Bearcats, take them, minus 27.5 at Navy. I'm putting some money on it right now, and there we go. Bam. Bearcats, minus 27.5, which the VIG on that is minus 110 at betonline.ag. Go there, set up your profile with the promo code Locked On, get 100% more to open up your bankroll and make some more for your bankroll by taking the Bearcats at minus 27.5. That's betonline.ag and the promo code Locked On.
I don't have them up in front of me, but I'm just going to say, I know they have been disappointing, but maybe put a little money on the Broncos. I think the Browns, with as beat up as they are, short turnaround, no Kareem Hunt. I need Nick Chubb back though for my fantasy team desperately. So I need him back.
I'm gonna guess that they bring him back as much as hopefully as much as they can, because they're gonna run into a situation where they've got to run. Forget his name. Is it De'Aaron Johnson? And he's only okay. Or D'Ernest Johnson is his name. And he's only okay. He's nowhere as good as Hunt and Chubb, and they want to run the ball. And they showed you why, because when they ran into that buzzsaw of Arizona, if you're going to rely on Baker Mayfield, you're going to lose. Like, it's just how it is. He's a pretty decent game management quarterback, but if you ask him to be more than that, he's not.
He needs those running backs. He needs those big things. And I got a quick little rant, and maybe we'll clip this out because I'm fine if this goes public. You absolutely pulled off robbery in the Locked On MLB fantasy trade. I have been trying for weeks to get a deal done to get Jamar Chase on my team. And all you have to, and I offered, let me tell you, I will put this out here for everyone to listen. I asked for a blockbuster deal to him. And I guess I asked too much, but I offered him Tyler Lockett, Kyler Murray, and Kittle for Joey B, Jamar Chase, and here's only the big price tag, which is Devontae Adams. You take that trade all day, and you sneak away. You're just like, Aaron Rodgers, where are you? Because we'll also get insight. Jeff and I may or may not be in last place in the Locked On MLB fantasy football.
Dying.
Dying. We're throwing that out there. Both teams trying to make some moves here. And all he has to do is give away one quarterback, and he's got literally a great lock combination that's going to be a shoo-in for a good stack points. Javier, I'm out there. You're frustrating me. Weeks, I'm telling you, 3 weeks I was trying to find a deal to get Jamar Chase because I wanted Mike Williams and Jamar Chase because he wasn't playing both of them at one point. And then he's like, nah, I'm San Diego. I'm going to go to San Diego. But anyway.
Right.
Frustrating.
And that's Paul putting our friend Javi on blast. Javi, Locked On Padres host. Yeah, and I'll tell you because the negotiations for that deal were very strenuous. He offered me the trade and I accepted it. we
God dang
that,
it.
this
And he sends me a message. He's like, I took another deal as if he was proposing. Now that makes God, son of a biscuit.
I
Oh
know
man.
I knew you would like that. I couldn't believe it. I was like, well, yeah, I'm see, here's the thing. Like when it comes, I am only so good at any fantasy sport. Now, basketball is going to be huge. I've never really ventured into it, but Sleeper's got this really awesome way to play fantasy basketball, and that is like you build your roster, and then each week you pick one game per player. So it's not who has the guys who are playing the most games. It's just you pick your best matchup with all your guys. So I like that, and I'm looking forward to playing that. But when it comes to fantasy football and fantasy baseball, I'm a little bit biased. And even though the Bengals have always been heartbreakers for me, I still try to get a couple of Bengals on my team. I
Gotcha.
try to get a couple of Reds on my team, and then I build my team from there. And that's why my fantasy ability is maybe a little bit limited in some aspects. So, but when he offered me that trade of Burrow and Chase for Rodgers, I'm like, discount double check. I'll see you later, man.
Yeah. I mean, it makes way more great trade for you. I mean, that's a no-brainer. I mean, there.
Yeah.
But boy, I need. I've literally been weeks. I've been trying to like, man, this is a sinking ship, and we need to right it somehow. And I don't. I was trying to. And no one's into the blockbuster. I guess I'm like, you guys finally get to be GM and play these blockbusters, and sure enough. But unfortunately, it's gonna be hard to trade Tyler Lockett now. I think that's gonna be kind of a tough one. But well, that was
It's
kind
all
of
about Russell Wilson. He's got this like
whoa. You knocked some books behind you over there.
yeah, yeah. How about that? A couple of Calvin and Hobbes books that scared the crap
Oh,
out of me.
nice.
Anyway, yeah. So that was a great trade. I was happy about that, and sorry that it kind of ruined you. But I'll tell you what, there's some good news, Paul, and let's talk about this real quick before we close, because Major League Baseball announced that they will finally do what they should have been doing for a very long time, and that is they will be providing now. And that they didn't come out; they're still working out the details of this, but they will be providing housing for minor league ball players. Finally, I will give them one clap because let's face it, they should have been doing this all along. But there you go.
Yeah, it's just an example of one clap is appropriate. It's progress. I mean, that is you do applaud progress, and it is exciting because minor league players will be in a better situation going forward than they were in the past. But this is just honestly far too little. I am the type of person that feels no sympathy for the higher ups, the 1% dipping a little bit more to just taking care of some people, especially people that are so key to your organization. I honestly believe that I wouldn't be surprised if you get better performance and better production and better long-term production from players that come up through your system that are treated, that don't have to find. I mean, you see some of these pictures, you hear some of these stories because there's a lot of minor league players that aren't going to hit the big show. But that doesn't mean that they don't deserve to have a nice place to live when they're actually going out and building out your roster of your developmental teams and doing this stuff that's important. I mean, you have enough money to fly, do your rich people things. Like you have enough money to make sure that like how do you not just have a facility for mine? Like why I'm kind of just surprised there's not like a campus type thing or
Yeah,
something where they can't do more. That's the thing. Now you've done this, do more. Living wages, benefits. These people are important. They sacrifice because you can't ask people to be minor league baseball players and normal people because that just doesn't react because you're like very few bosses. You got to have some really cool bosses that are like, hey, I'd love to work for you, but 8 months out of the year I can't,
right.
because I'm playing base. I'm training. I'm traveling. I'm playing. Because and I'm not so I don't have as much toned into the minors, so I don't know how the day to day normally works. But still, I have to imagine game day is 2 hours pre. 3 hour game, 2 hour post, and you're putting all of that into that's 7 hours of your day. And then you got to get if you're going to sleep and recover because you're an athlete, where do you fit in the 6 to 8 hours that a normal person works to earn in some cases enough for a living wage, not always, but that's what I'm saying. These sports
Right.
teams across the board, there should be way more I'm never opposed to more investment in your players and more things because you have the money to do so. I mean, and that might not be true for every team, but when I look at the Rockies, I'm like, dude, you're a top 10 a team in attendance every year for a team that's sub 500. Like, and you're not, I mean, your payroll's not going to, you're not paying everyone a ton of money. I mean, I know you're paying the Cardinals $50 million for one of the best players that you've ever had, but
Right.
again, great news, but let's do more. Let's be better. Let's invest more in these minor league players.
And make no mistake about it, we're talking about a living wage. We're not talking about minor leaguers making millions of dollars a year. We're
Right.
talking about dudes making, maybe, 30, 35, something, at least enough to live the life of where they are. And especially, I mean, I think of guys like CNL Perez for the Reds. He was up and down from AAA about 19 different times this year. You're going to tell me that he's got a normal life? There's no way that a guy like that has a normal life because he's got to be in between from Louisville to Cincinnati or wherever they are. They might not be in Cincinnati. They might be in Florida or they
Yeah.
might be in California. So it's like to ask these guys to have a normal life. And I've heard a lot of old hat takes from this, like, well, they chose this life. They chose to chase a dream. It's like, here's the thing though. They're doing that and they are committing their life to it. They're not punching a clock. This is not a 40-hour-a-week job. They don't have a finite schedule that it's like, okay, from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. I'm doing this, so I've got, a couple of hours here where I can work a part-time job. No, that's not a thing. Like,
Right.
these minor league dudes have dedicated their life to it, so at least give them the ability, even if they're in single A or rookie ball or whatever, give them the ability to live.
Yeah.
And stop asking them to go shop at Aldi's once every 3 months with the salary that you don't pay them. Like, come
Yeah.
on, give them the living wage.
Yeah. It just no excuse. For me, I maybe I am not as, and that's kind of, I guess, maybe where I close my mind, and maybe I gotta be put. You're big business. You're major. You're
Yeah.
professional sports. You're entertainment. I know deep down we know how much money and deals are there, and it's not too hard to be like, hey, you know what? Let's put a little bit more for these people that are eventually going to come and perform for us at this level. That's what we're hoping for. Why would you not want them to be treated as best as they can, and especially because I get worried about the health. I mean, would you see your minor league players are sharing a room and sleeping on twin mattresses on the floor?
Right.
And what if one of those is a top 10 prospect? Because I mean,
Right.
that's definitely happened there. I mean, I know top prospects might get a little different and they get their signing bonuses and stuff, but there's that still happens. There's still so many variables there.
Well, and to even add to the point about big business, it's not as if there is not one sports owner. I don't care what sport you're talking about. There's not a sports owner that their livelihood depends on that team. That team is a frivolous part of their business, whatever that might be. So for people to act as if they've got to run this really strict budget and they can't spend that much money, well, that's foolhardy because you bought the team. You
Right.
you invested in this. This is not something that was thrust on you, and this is not something that you need for survival. These minor leaguers are surviving while they're also trying to grow and become and follow their dream. They are also surviving. So help them do that because, well, if you bought the team, you should be able to do that.
Yeah, and just for the record too, I'm not paid. Internships should always be paid. You should never, unless
Yeah.
you actively volunteer to go be an unpaid intern. I just believe that it's kind of like time is so valuable. Time and health is so valuable, and if people are committing those things to you as a business owner, I really do believe that you should be doing everything in your power to respect that, honor that, and reward that. I mean, because like you said, to get to double A, to get to triple A for some of these people, that is the mountain.
Right.
And that is it, that is something that people got to focus. But we're going a little long here, so maybe I think we might need to reel it in a little bit here,
Yeah.
to
I
Jeff.
I
But
Yeah, we get talking about stuff like this, Paul, and time kind of goes away from us. But I think that it deserves a clap, but it's
yeah,
a slow clap, and the next clap comes when they start doing more for minor leaguers because there's still more they can do. But that's how we're going to end it today, Paul. I appreciate getting to talk with you these last couple of days on these awesome crossovers. Like we said, this is part 2. If you missed part 1, go check it out. You can find it here on the Locked On Reds YouTube channel or on Locked On Rockies or Locked On Reds, one of your favorite podcasting apps. And thanks again for making us your first listen, Paul. Because where can they find us?
everywhere. We're free and streaming everywhere.
absolutely everywhere. But for Paul and myself, that's going to wrap up our crossover edition. For Locked On Reds listeners, you can check out some awesome On This Date in Reds History podcast tomorrow. We're throwing it back a while, and we got Cam Miller from the Reds Hall of Fame and Museum to talk about all of that. And Paul, what
Oh,
you got
that's
coming up?
really cool. Honestly, so I used to work for the flagship for the Reds in Athens, WATH Power.
Yes.
That's actually one thing I do want to tease here. And if it's the same voice that does this date in Reds baseball that you're joining, he's awesome. He's super fun. I think it is the same voice, which is great. But hey, for you Ohio fans out there, I do also host for my radio station there in Athens. It's a show all about Ohio bands. We interview other bands too, but the main focus is Ohio bands. It's called Groovy Soup. If you're interested in finding your next favorite band from the Buckeye State, we're probably close to 150 episodes, hundreds of bands from Ohio, your next favorite bands out there. But you can also find us for Offseason Rockies talk here at LO Rockies on Twitter. YouTube is coming soon for Locked On Rockies if you're interested on that. And we also are on all streaming services at Locked On Rockies. And I'm at Paul Holden 33. And if you play music and want to be a part of the show, let me know. Be happy to have you on the show.
There you go. He is Paul. I am Jeff, and you can hear us every single day on Locked On Rockies and Locked On Reds. But as for today's episode, that'll do it. Thanks again for watching and listening, and we'll talk to you guys very soon.